Hi class, so I decided to take my picture and my face out of this PowerPoint. This is try not to make this too long. More again, I'm trying to do this more as a review. I want to talk about the principles and elements of design today as applied to architecture. So I'll try to go through this a little quicker. If you have questions, of course, email me or ask me in class. Um, so the big thing I want to get to is the visual design elements. This is essentially like saying what kind of ingredients does someone have in their pantry to be able to bake something. So if I have ingredients in my pantry, I might have some flour, some baking soda, some baking powder, some eggs, some vanilla extract, right? Well, I can take those and make different things. I can make biscuits in one situation. I can make, whether it's waffles or pancakes, I could vary it up and maybe next time I'll make a cake. So depending on how I use this and what proportions and what kind of emphasis I put on using those ingredients, in this situation elements, I can get different outcomes. So that's really the big picture idea of these 6 elements. What are they? Line, color, form and shape, space, texture, and value. And the amounts that each architect or designer uses this will create a different architectural style or architectural feel to convey a different kind of message, I guess, to the viewer. So lines, we know we have different types of lines. So we have vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and curved. And each one, as you see here, create a different kind of feel to the viewer. If it's vertical, then we're talking about tall buildings. So you think of dignity, formality, stability, and strength. Think of these tall skyscrapers. Think of a Trump Tower, per se. That wasn't done on accident in terms of these long, tall, vertical lines on this almost square building. It's meant to symbolize a sense of power, and there's more than just the height, but that's a big part of it. Horizontals, we think of these longer buildings, something like what you'll see at a school. Think of the fact that your school is not 3, 4 stories on top of each other. Instead, this kind of long horizontal lines going throughout the campus, all at the same elevation. Diagonals are kind of an excitement, a crazy kind of feel, along with curved. It creates freedom and natural. The natural makes you think more back to the way nature, creates things on its own without human input. It kind of creates a soothing feeling that calms you down. So some pictures of each of these. The vertical lines here, whether it's the Empire State Building, the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, or the skyscraper in Madrid, they all kind of convey the same message. Very different though than horizontal lines. An office building or a church might want it to be a place of calm, kind of peace and relaxation. So they're gonna go for a different set of lines. Think about if you're given a project and someone says, you know what, I want this to be, a, you know, a yoga studio or a yoga arena or some kind of peaceful thing. Do you want this tall skyscraper that you're gonna have to go 5 stories up? Or do you want something that's going to be kind of, serene and, give you this different feel? Each of these lines give a different feel, just the way diagonal lines create that excitement, just the way curved lines kind of create this freedom to you. A lot of different examples, and you're going to be looking at different examples when you start looking at different architectural styles. Color is another ingredient we can use. Some buildings don't have great color. I think here at Warren, we probably lack a little color than we should. I mean, I like the brick with the blue. Feels a little jailhousey, and they decided to use color to create an impact. I don't know if it always works out, but these are 2 examples in which it has a profound effect on the design in the sense that it stands out. I would be able to see, these from very far away. Look at this, the St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow. I mean, look at the beautiful colors that exist on it. It definitely stands out, and it makes it feel whimsical. It makes it feel fun. This is 2 things you definitely want to know: warm colors versus cool colors. Know which ones are in each category. It's important that you know that. This kind of difference between warm and cool colors also creates a different feel. Whereas, the warm colors create this excitement and this energy and this, it's very different than cool colors, which create this calm and peace, just the same way lines did that for us. Look at the difference in these 4 colors. I mean, imagine yourself cover all but one tile at a time. So start with the gray and cover the other 3 up with your hands right now. On your screen, just cover them up. Think of how you feel. Now cover up everything except the purple. Wow. Versus the kind of cream tan colored versus this retro striped colors. Does this take you to a different era? Does it take you to a different feel? I feel like each one does. Form and shape, we got to realize that this important distinguishment between the two, 3D versus 2D. Form is going to be where we're dealing with 3D shapes like a sphere versus shape, which is going to be something like a circle. Space, the biggest way I think about this is the way most of the time it's actually what we notice most is open space. It's actually something I really take into consideration when I design my classroom. And I haven't maybe been as successful, but I've always thinking of like, how do I want students to move throughout this space? What's going to give them the comfort of being able to locate equipment quickly, of being able to get resources easily without disturbances? What's going to allow them to view the lecture and the screen the most properly? And the way we design and use space is so different. Think about how different every single one of your classrooms probably is. They all have the same desk for the most part these days. They all have the same whiteboards, the same projectors. How is each one different? Think about how different your bedroom could be if you just move your bed over there or add another table. The space is such a huge thing that gives a different feel. And I think it's nowhere more obvious than your day-to-day than in a classroom. I want you to pay attention to how different is each of your classrooms and how do you feel in each one based on the use of that space. You can create different feels. You can create an open, uncluttered space, or you can create this cramped, busy space. But unused versus good use of space is such such an important thing to pay attention to. Here's another image of the way that can look. Another image of what it could look. Hopefully it's going to come up. There we go. Look at this workspace here and see how they've laid out the desk. Texture is our next element. It's just the way something feels, whether it's rough or smooth. The type of materials we use can create a big texture component. I mean, think about whether it's concrete versus glass or steel. What kind of feel does that give to your building, to your space? And how does it play with the color and the light that's naturally coming in there? Smooth texture, like this glass facade of a high-rise building, creates a very different feel to this exterior metal facade of the Disney Concert Hall. They both have a similar smooth fixture, but that's going to be super different than the way you feel in this rough texture. So look at the two and think about how you felt. One's kind of silky and smooth. The rough texture is a very interesting kind of feel to this space. Value, being one of our last elements, it's the relative lightness or darkness of a color. So shade is dark. The degree of darkness, and tint is pale. You can get each one by adding black or white. So if I add black to a color, then I'm increasing the shade. If I'm adding more white to a color, then I'm increasing the tint on it. Okay. Here's a good example of it, and you can see the different values of this kind of green aqua color. So those are the elements, but now those elements are used in order to encompass these principles. Okay, so again, this is kind of like saying, okay, fine, I had these 6 different ingredients. Now let me show you 7 different recipes I can make with it. How can I combine these elements in order to create these 7 different products? And how much flour I use, or how many eggs I use, or how much water I put in it creates a different feel altogether. So with balance, it's important that we note these 5 types. Okay, parts of the design are equally distributed to create a sense of stability. So balance can be found in different ways. It can be symmetrical balance, or it could be asymmetrical, which means you don't have a balance. It could be radial, which is more circular, vertical, which is tall, horizontal, which is longer. Think about already, how vertical and horizontal probably have lines in them, and they even have the same word of vertical and horizontal. Radial, I said circle, isn't that a shape? Okay, so I'm using these elements to create a different principle. Symmetrical, okay, identical in relation to center of axis. Asymmetrical, they're not the same on the left or right. It's going to create a different feel. The radial, we see this in domes and stuff like that. So what kind of feel does that give versus something like this, which is vertical? Okay, the top and bottom parts are equal versus horizontal, where the left and right sides are equal. Okay, so again, the balance is created here from left and right, just right down the center. The other one was created balance. When it came to vertical balance, it was equal on top and bottom. So horizontal balance, the parts on the left and right are equal. Just another example, Hearst Castle, beautiful. Just split it down the horizontal side. Balance is a great example of what it might look like inside. Rhythm, I'm just going to show you is repeated use of line, shape, color, or texture. So if I have regular rhythm, it means that it's a repeated pattern. So you can see these waves or these colors are all repeated. Whereas something like, let me get to it, random rhythm means they're all just different. I mean, all these end at different heights. They're all different colors. They're all different. There's a lot of reasons why this is random rhythm. There's no uniformity between any of these. Gradated rhythm means that you're getting smaller or larger as you go. So it's kind of like the idea of this type of thing, that you're gradating up as you're getting smaller as you go up, or maybe even bigger as you go up. Maybe you can have like something like this. That's gradated, same shape but different size. So there's a great example of it, the Chinese towers over in Munich, Germany. Emphasis is one key point that you're looking at. So if I'm going to go ahead and emphasize on something, you can clearly see that this is the emphasis there. Proportion and scale. Okay, how large is something in comparison to something else? That's proportion. And scale means, again, how, in this situation, how much larger is this one than the other one? Movement, flow or feeling of action. Okay, so how much, what kind of feel do you get from the different lines you use, or different colors you use, or the different balances? All these things. How did you use your elements to create movement in your building versus contrast? How did you use color, proportion, scale, shape, texture? How did you use these ingredients to create contrast? Obviously here there's some color contrast. Okay, here there's some texture differences between the Louvre and something like that behind it. Okay, sometimes it was shape. What kind of different shapes did they use to create a difference? Okay, it's very clear that there's big differences. Unity is achieved by consistent use of lines, color, material, and texture. So you'll notice that if you go to like a UCLA, all their buildings are brick. That's because they're going for unity. Very different than my alma mater in Berkeley, where every building was basically different. Unity gives you a sense as well. A lot of times it's done with something like the color. Okay, maybe that brick facade. Maybe it's done with the type of buildings and the heights of each of the buildings. Okay, so those types of things you want to pay attention to. How the space is used, that might be another way. What value it has, that might be another way you create unity. And other examples of unity. This one we said was, the funny thing is earlier we would say like, okay, this is a asymmetrical balance. But the truth is there is unity in this, in the sense that, where do they have unity? All of them have the same type of shape. All of them are cylindrical towers with this, kind of shape on the top. Is there unity in this? Is there unity in this image, the Taj Mahal? So again, you want to know all the elements. You want to know the principles. You want to know what's an element versus what's a principle. So you're going to be tested on what's the difference between the two. What are the 6 different elements? What are the 7 different principles? And give examples. If I'm looking at an image, can you clearly tell me what's the difference between the two, in the sense that like what type of elements are used? Okay, so you're going to get some practice to this.